I'm so excited to have our next guest join the Annie Fry Show here. We're speaking with New York Times bestselling author Tulsi Gabbard, a four-term Congresswoman and combat veteran currently serving as Lieutenant Colonel in the U.S. Army Reserve. And we're going to talk about her first book, For Love of Country, which is topping the bestseller charts, available now. And Congresswoman, so great to have you. You and I spent some time together. I listened to the audio version of the book, and I was so pleased to get to know so much more about you. Thank you for being with us here today.
Thank you so much, Annie. It's great to join you, and thank you for taking the time to read and to listen to the book. I really put a lot of my heart and time into it because of what we're facing as a country right now, and the hopes, and really the knowledge that there are a lot of other Americans who have their own path that's very similar to mine. Former Democrats, maybe even current Democrats, people who are politically homeless, and yet who are in a place, unfortunately, where they're too afraid to stand up and speak the truth.
Yeah, I think that going into this book, I was so intrigued at the opportunity to take you in your own words, because I think you're one of the most interesting enigmas that have come out of Washington, D.C. I know that's how we kind of got to know you, is you coming out of Washington, D.C. I'm sure people who go there don't want to be defined by that. But to understand, your book is about leaving the Democratic Party, but that doesn't automatically turn you into Republican. And so people are kind of wondering, like, who are you if you don't fit in this two-party system? What do you stand for? And you lay this out beautifully about the things you care about most. And the thing that I learned the most about you is your long legacy that you've had serving both your country in the military, in political service, and even, in Hawaii, the land that you love there. I think that service is at the key of this. And we do not live in a culture right now that emphasizes serving.
Yeah, Annie, I'm smiling right now because I have been called a quote unquote political enigma for as long as I've been involved with
That's
politics.
a compliment.
And it is a compliment. It's a reflection of who I am, which is I'm an independent minded person. And my love and my loyalty and my commitment and dedication is to our country and to the American people, not one party or another party. Obviously, there are practical implications of political parties in our system, and I'm very cognizant of that. But for anybody to be simply judged by or forced to fit into a specific box or a specific label, it's just not real. It's not how we are as humans. There are some things I agree with and some things I disagree with, and that's one of the things that I talk about in my book. Was what attracted me originally to the Democratic Party was that it seemed to be a big open tent party that welcomed people who had different ideas and different experiences to actually come and talk through how do we solve the great challenges of our day, and know that even if we're not starting out on the same page, if we share the same objective, we can get to that best solution through an open dialogue and discussion, through exercising our right to free speech and freedom of expression. And of course, now fast forward 20 plus years, that doesn't exist in today's Democratic Party.
Yeah.
It's one of the most disturbing things because of our fundamental right to free speech and how the Democratic Party has become so undemocratic and so unwelcoming, or completely rejecting people who don't conform to whatever their specific narrative or agenda is of the day. You look at the Republican Party now, and I have a lot of friends in the Republican Party, people I worked with throughout my 8 years in Congress. And some people, if you watch the mainstream cable news, are like, oh gosh, what's wrong with these people? And even some Republicans ask me, like, how are Democrats so disciplined? They all do whatever their boss says to do. It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing to have a political party that is welcoming of people with very different ideas and views on how to solve these problems. And that's what we should encourage more of in the country, regardless of what party you belong to.
I agree wholeheartedly. Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard with us right now. I want to pull out one little anecdote that really just hit the juxtaposition kind of to what you're saying right there about, a representative goes to Congress, you go to Capitol Hill because you are representing constituents. Now, those constituents for you are in Hawaii. You tell a story here about, and you've been very peace forward, I'll put it that way. You've talked about nuclear war quite a lot as a very serious issue. And there was a time during the Obama administration where there was going to be some action in Syria. And you talked a little bit in your book about a woman you met at a gas station, and then you
Yeah.
followed that up with a phone call you got from the chief of staff from the first lady. And I had to ask myself, like, I had to pause and say, man, once you get there, once you get
Yeah.
inside the Beltway, who are you representing? Is it the constituent or the party? And I was going to ask you if you could maybe share a little bit
Of
about
course.
those two individuals who you spoke to about that. It's really powerful.
Yeah, thanks, Annie. And this directly connects to what we just talked about the difference between blind party loyalty and allegiance, putting party ahead of what's best for the country rather than the other way around, actually putting what's best for the country first and foremost, which is why I titled the book that I did. It is for love of country that I am who I am and that I do what I do. When I was first elected to Congress and sworn in as a new member of Congress, in a very unexpected way to me, there was a lot of noise and positive coverage and soft news stories about me as I was coming as a new member of Congress. A lot of excitement in the Democratic Party. People saying she's the rising star, she's the future, all of these things. They didn't really know who I was. They had read the top lines about me or my bio. But very quickly, within those first few months of my being in office, they recognized I was not going to allow them to allow myself to be a puppet for them and their interests, and that the reason why I ran, the priorities that I came and brought with me to Congress was to serve our country and to honor my brothers and sisters who I served with overseas in the Middle East, who never made that trip home, who made that ultimate sacrifice. And so the story you're talking about actually happened about 6 or 7 months after I had been in Congress. President Obama came to Congress seeking authorization to start a new regime change war in the Middle East, this time in Syria. And after I looked at this woman, heard about it in the news, and she stopped me as I was pumping gas in Kapolei on the island of Oahu. And I didn't know who she was, but she grabbed my arm and with tears welling up in her eyes, just shared how she had been so concerned about her son who had been deployed. He had finally come home, and she was terrified about the difficulty in transition that he was having of going from being at war for so long and now coming home, only to have this threat popping up in the news that he may be forced to go back yet again. And her fear was that I may lose him forever. I just got him back. They want to take him away again, and for what? And so I've never forgotten that exchange I had with her. I had others similar to that with many people after that. But after going and doing the analysis of what the president was asking of Congress, I came to the conclusion that this is not in the best interest of the American people or our country. There's no clear objective. There's no exit plan. And we would end up likely in yet another decades-long boondoggle like we've seen happen too often in the Middle East. I said that publicly, was the first Democrat to come out against President Obama's request, and immediately got a call from the White House saying, how dare you, not based on substantive differences. The message was, how dare you go against your team? How dare you go against your president without care for, well, Tulsi, you've been deployed twice in the Middle East. Maybe you have some experience about your concerns. And so this, again, is further evidence of the problem of what happens with politicians who put party before country.
It was very frustrating for me to hear that, but I think it's realistic to think about the party pressure that gets put on people
Yeah.
once they go to represent. But it's not just intra-party that pressure hits. I mean, we've seen you talk in your book also about the Google suppression. You had this great peak of interest
Yeah.
after your debate, and that was immediately like, oh, that's problematic. We got to stop that. Google participated in squashing that, and now we know in 2024 how much more big tech has participated in shaping the narrative. And
Yeah.
with everything that you've learned, Tulsi, with the really great force to keep you at bay in the Democrat Party so much that you said, peace out, that I wonder how much of the whole narrative has been shaped for us and how many Americans are kind of waking up going, everything that I've been told for so long, it just doesn't feel right. They got a gut feeling. The Biden administration is not really making the case very strongly for the Democrat Party. Like, where do you think the mental space is right now for the average, not super politically involved American voter?
Yeah, first, just real quick, you mentioned Google, you mentioned big tech, a lot of the evidence that has actually come to light in the years after my own personal experience of Google intervening on behalf of the Democratic National Party, people ask me in my book, I talk a lot about the Democrat elite. They say, who are the Democrat elite? Well, those are two examples. It is not only the elected figureheads of the party that we know of, Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama, but it is their partners in the mainstream media. It is big tech and social media moguls. It is those who are willing to do their bidding. It is their multi-billion-dollar funders like George Soros. These are the people pulling the strings. These are the people making decisions. I think because of the consequences of these insane policies, like trying to tell us a boy can be a girl anytime he says, I am a girl, forcing girls into a position where Title IX is totally destroyed, and any possibility of a true, fair, and equal level playing field for women and girls in sports is gone out the window under this administration. You look at things like defund the police, their open border policies and how they're affecting communities and cities all across the country. I think as these things continue to escalate, more and more Americans do have that gut feeling that I don't pay attention to politics, but what's happening is not good. My paycheck is going shorter and shorter. I can't afford to buy the things that I used to be able to afford. These things are becoming harder and harder for people to deny. I'm encouraging them to recognize the cause of people's problems through this book, and therefore then recognize, okay, what do I as an American need to do about this? Because we all have to own our responsibility to save our country, to defend our freedom.
Congressman Tulsi Gabbard with us right now. We're speaking about her latest book, For Love of Country, Leave the Democrat Party Behind. I encourage you to get it. I've read it myself, and I highly recommend it to get a full understanding in Tulsi's own words, who she is and why she's not a Democrat anymore and where she is right now. I mean, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention your presidential aspirations that have existed, and you really did, even in the midst of all of the opposition, get the attention of the American people. I'm curious if you still have those presidential aspirations, if they're near to your heart right now, or how you feel about a potential run once again.
You know, the thought has never entered my mind that I've chosen a quote unquote political career. I've never seen it that way. And so I've never aspired, oh, well, one day I will be president for the sake of being president. I have no interest in that. My run for the presidency in 2020, and if I were to run again, would be rooted in a recognition that that there is not someone else already stepping up to the plate who I feel confident in is committed to our Constitution, committed to putting the American people first, who is not beholden to the military industrial complex, and who takes seriously my brothers and sisters in uniform and the choice that we've made to lay down our lives for our country and understand the cost that comes with that decision between war and peace. If that person is there, then I wouldn't need to run for president. Whether I run again or not, I don't know. My goal is to serve our country and to uphold the oath that I took to the Constitution.
If I may, just one final question. We're speaking with Tulsi Gabbard about
Yes.
her latest book. When people like you feel as though, maybe I didn't leave the Democrat Party, the Democrat Party left me, somewhere in there where positions haven't totally changed, but you don't recognize the party that you used to support. People are compelled right now to think it's the Democrat Party and Trump.
Yeah.
And the idea of leaving the Democrat Party and directly supporting Trump seems like a jolt for a lot of people. You've experienced time with Donald Trump as an individual, as a man, as somebody who has run this country. What advice do you give to those people who feel like this Democrat Party isn't for me anymore, knowing that Donald Trump is the consequence of less support for the Democrat Party?
You know, I just encourage people to set whatever, feelings or emotions that they may have around certain individuals aside and actually focus on the consequences of policies. This is a unique time in our country where we have two people running against each other, both asking to be our president and both who have served as president. They actually have a record that we can look to. We don't just have to buy what they're saying and hope they mean what they say. There's an actual record and comparison to know what kind of president they would be and the results of their policies. And so whether we're talking about border security, the economy, the inflation that we are continuing to experience now for years, We look at foreign policy and domestic policy. We look at the security of our country and our ability to live in safe and peaceful communities. You may not be hope inspired. You may not have your ideal dream candidate. This is the real world that we live in. And the choice that we have before us, in my view, is very clear. And the differences are stark.
Yeah.
People will make their decisions on election day, but I just encourage people to make sure that those are informed decisions and think about what is in the best interest of you and your kids, your family, and our ability to live in a truly free, safe, and peaceful society.
Yeah, but we have such a clear choice in front of us, and this current way of doing things is not sustainable. Tulsi Gabbard, the book is For Love of Country, Leave the Democrat Party Behind. I encourage people to check out the audiobook because you have a wonderful voice to listen to and keep you company
Thank
for a
you.
while. Thank you so much for the time today. It's been an honor to have you.
Great to talk to you, Annie. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You as well. We've been speaking with Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard, a New York Times best-selling author, four-term Congresswoman, and Lieutenant Colonel in the United States Army Reserve. And her book is For Love of Country, Leave the Democrat Party Behind.